Continuing on page 24, House Bill 799, a bill to amend and reenact section of the Code of Virginia relating to the Virginia Residential Property Disclosure Act, change in circumstances. Board from the Committee on General Laws.
The gentleman from Fairfax, Mr. Simon.
Mr. Speaker, House Bill 799 would remove 28 words from the Code of Virginia and would eliminate the need for a form at real estate settlements across the Commonwealth.
Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Charlottesville, Mr. Toscano.
Mr. Speaker, I asked, will the gentleman yield for a question?
Will the gentleman yield?
The gentleman yields.
Gentleman yields.
Mr. Speaker, I asked the gentleman 28 words from the Code of Virginia. Can't you do any better than that?
Mr. Speaker, I would answer the gentleman that I would like to do much better than that, but a number of my bills have been killed in committee before I could get here today. But I'm doing my best.
Mr. Speaker, will the gentleman yield for an additional question?
Will the gentleman yield?
The gentleman yields.
The gentleman yields.
I
Mr.
yield.
Speaker, I was looking at the gentleman's website late last night, and I noticed he had a degree in Middle Eastern Studies and Journalism from NYU. And this is the bill we get from that?
Mr. Speaker, I would respond to the gentleman that NYU is a fine institution of higher education, and in addition to my major degree, I've got a broad liberal arts education in a number of variety of fields, and that this comes from many of those courses that I took in my time at NYU.
I thank the gentleman. I'd let him proceed with his explanation of his bill. Thank you.
The gentleman from Fairfax, Mr. Sickles.
Mr. Speaker, would the gentleman yield?
Will the
I
gentleman
yield.
When I came here 11 years ago, there was a term that we often heard that now that the General Assembly's even become so much more liberal since then, it was cluttering the code. We did not want to clutter the code up. Anytime someone didn't like a bill, said that's just cluttering the code. So I have to give a prize to our freshman here for his first bill, decluttering the code. But I'm afraid that he was unfamiliar with Rule 33 that says a member is banned from introducing any bill that may affect his or her industry or legal practice. And I wonder if the gentleman was aware of that rule.
Mr. Speaker, I am aware of that rule, and this would have such a minimal impact. And I anticipated this question might come up, Mr. Speaker, so if the House will indulge me, I have a chart. I've learned from the gentleman from Charlottesville that sometimes it's helpful to have a chart. Now, I don't have the same budget as the House leader, so mine's a little more primitive. But my chart shows that prior to the introduction of this bill, the average settlement is about 114 documents that need to be signed. After this bill becomes the law, I hope, should it be the will of this body, there'd be about 113. So I would suggest that the effect on my practice is so de minimis as to not implicate Rule number 33.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Further question?
Gentleman yield. Will the gentleman
Since,
yield? Wait.
The gentleman yields.
Gentleman yield.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before we make this monumental change of importance to every settlement attorney in the Commonwealth, maybe this would be another chance for the gentleman to show his expertise, and maybe he could recite all the disclosures that are required to be made relative to a property that is being sold.
Mr. Speaker, if we have time, I am indeed happy to recite all of the disclosures that are necessary.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, just 5.
Just
We don't have time for 5.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Fairfax, Mr. Serbell.
Gentleman, will the gentleman yield for a question?
Will the gentleman yield?
Yield.
Gentleman yield.
Mr. Speaker, unlike the other gentleman, I have a substantive question on behalf of the consumers, of Virginia. And I was looking at Section 5522, which you're trying to amend here, and trying to figure out how exactly it would interplay with Section 519.4, which I believe was the gentleman from Scott County's bill last year, which says that you have an affirmative obligation to disclose if your home was a meth lab. And so I'm just wondering, if your bill passes and a real estate owner no longer has to affirmatively say whether the condition of their home has changed, if some purchaser in Northern Virginia, where we have an abundance of meth labs, were to decide to use their home as a meth lab between the time of the contract and the time of sale, whether they'd have to tell anybody.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the gentleman from Fairfax for his very substantive and insightful question. And in fact, this is a subject.
The gentleman's resumed his seat. You don't even have to answer if you don't want to. Shall the bill be engrossed and passed to its third reading?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Shall the bill be engrossed and passed to its third reading? Those in favor of that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and passed to its